Have you ever looked at someone who seems completely fine after a breakup and thought they didn't even care? They moved on so quickly, they didn't cry, they didn't beg, they just walked away like nothing happened. And part of you wondered if they ever really loved you at all. But what if I told you that the person who seems the most unaffected is actually the one drowning the hardest? What if the silence you mistook for indifference was actually the sound of their entire world collapsing inside them? What if everything you thought you knew about that person was completely backwards? Today, I'm going to reveal something that most people never understand about a specific type of person. And if you've ever loved someone who pushed you away, who kept you at arm's length even when you gave them everything, then what I'm about to share will change the way you see your own experience forever. I'm going to explain why losing an empath hits an avoidant harder than anything else they will ever face in their entire life. And I'm going to show you what really happens inside the mind of someone who built walls so high that they forgot how to let anyone in, only to realize too late that they just lost the only person who ever made those walls feel safe. You're going to want to stay until the very end, because I'm going to leave you with something powerful, a truth that will not only help you understand what happened, but will also give you the strength to heal from it. So if you've ever felt like you gave everything to someone who couldn't meet you halfway, if you've ever wondered why they walked away so easily or why they seemed to recover so fast, then pay attention to every single word I'm about to say. Because the answer is nothing like what you probably think. Most people believe that the person who leaves is the one who felt less. They assume that the one who walked away cared less, wanted less, loved less, and in most cases that might be true, but not this time, not with this type of person. See, there's something deeply broken inside people who identify as avoidant. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they feel so much that they had to teach themselves to stop feeling altogether. They built walls not because they wanted to keep you out, but because they were terrified of what would happen if they let you in and then lost you anyway. And here's where it gets really interesting. The only people who could ever reach them, who could ever make it past those walls without triggering fear, were empaths. People who felt deeply, who loved without conditions, who could accept the silence and the distance and the emotional unavailability without running away. Empaths were the one type of person who could sit with an avoidant in their darkness and not ask them to come into the light before they were ready. And that acceptance, that was everything to the avoidant. That was their oxygen. That was the only time they ever felt truly seen without feeling judged. So when the empath finally leaves, when they've given everything they have and finally realize that the avoidant will never meet them halfway, something devastating happens to the avoidant. They don't just lose a partner, they lose the only person who ever made their chaotic inner world feel like a safe place to exist. And they have no idea how to handle that loss, because no one ever taught them how to feel. No one ever taught them how to grieve. No one ever gave them the emotional tools to process a wound like this. So they do what they've always done. They shut down. They push it away. They pretend they're fine. And they suffer in silence while the world around them thinks they're completely okay. That's the hidden tragedy of an avoidant person losing an empath. They lose the one person who understood them, and they lose the only way they knew how to feel anything at all. Stay with me because what comes next is going to blow your mind. I'm about to take you deep inside the psychology of the avoidant mind to show you exactly what happened behind those walls, why they built them in the first place, and why losing you hurt them more than they'll ever be able to tell you. And I'm also going to give you something powerful at the end that will help you transform this pain into your greatest strength. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. Now that you understand what happens when an empath leaves, let's go even deeper. Let's understand why these walls existed in the first place. Because you cannot fully heal from something you do not understand. And the truth is, the person who built those walls didn't build them to hurt you. They built them to survive. Think about that for a moment. Every avoidant person was once a child who learned very early that love was not safe. Maybe they cried and no one came. Maybe they reached out and got pushed away. Maybe they showed their vulnerable side and got mocked or rejected or abandoned. Somewhere along the way, their young mind made a devastating conclusion. It whispered to them in the silence of their bedroom, if you let people in, they will leave you. If you show them who you really are, they will use it against you. If you need them, you will lose them. So the only way to survive is to need no one. That single belief became the foundation of their entire existence. They didn't choose to become cold. They chose to become cold because warmth got them burned. They didn't choose to push you away. They chose it because every time they reached out before, they got pushed away first. So they adapted. They learned to hide their emotions so deeply that they forgot those emotions existed. They learned to rely on no one so that no one could ever leave them unprepared. They became masters of self-sufficiency, not because they wanted to, but because vulnerability felt like death. And here's what makes this even more painful. While other people were learning how to connect, how to cry openly, how to ask for help, the avoidant person was learning the opposite. They were learning to swallow their tears, to pretend they didn't need anyone, to smile when they were breaking inside. They became so good at faking strength that they forgot they were faking it. They convinced themselves that they didn't need love, that attachment was weakness, that people would only disappoint them anyway. And they believed it with every fiber of their being because believing it was the only thing that kept them from falling apart completely. Then something remarkable happened. An empath walked into their life. And for the first time in their existence, someone didn't trigger their fear. Most people who try to get close to an avoidant do so aggressively. They push, they demand, they make the avoidant feel cornered and claustrophobic. But empaths are different. Empaths feel before they act. They sense the fear underneath the silence. They see the wounded child hiding behind the cold exterior. And instead of running or pushing harder, they do something that rewrites the avoidant's entire understanding of human connection. They stay. They accept. They love without conditions, without demands, without expectations of reciprocity. The empath didn't ask the avoidant to change. They didn't pressure them to open up faster than they were ready. They didn't make them feel guilty for needing space. They simply existed alongside them with patience that felt almost impossible. And for the avoidant, that patience was revolutionary. It was the first time in their life that someone made them feel safe enough to breathe. The empath became the only person who could sit in the avoidant's darkness without asking them to come into the light. The empath accepted the silence. They accepted the distance. They accepted the emotional unavailability without weaponizing it against the avoidant. And that acceptance, that was the oxygen that kept the avoidant alive. You have to understand how powerful that was for someone who learned that everyone leaves. The empath stayed. The empath didn't run when things got hard. The empath saw the broken pieces and loved them anyway. And slowly, almost unconsciously, the avoidant began to let their guard down. Not because they healed, but because the empath made them believe, for the first time ever, that maybe this time it would be different. Maybe this time, if they let someone in, that someone wouldn't leave them destroyed. That belief was the most beautiful and the most dangerous thing the avoidant ever allowed themselves to feel. So the empath stayed. They gave and they gave without asking for anything in return. They accepted the silence and the distance and the emotional walls because they believed with all their heart that the avoidant would eventually meet them halfway. They believed that their patience would be rewarded, that eventually the avoidant would open up, would let them in completely, would finally let themselves be loved the way they deserved to be loved. And for a while, it seemed like that was exactly what was happening. The avoidant let their guard down inch by inch. They started to believe in the connection too. They started to feel something they hadn't felt in years, something that felt dangerously close to hope. But then something went wrong. The weight of their own fear grew heavier than the love they were feeling. They started to feel overwhelmed by the depth of connection they were experiencing. They started to panic because being this close to someone felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. And instead of leaning into the love, instead of trusting the empath who had never given them a reason not to trust, they did what they had always done. They pulled away. They created distance. They started building the walls higher and thicker than before, not because they stopped caring, but because caring felt like drowning, and they didn't know how to swim. The empath tried to hold on. They tried to understand. They tried to be patient one more time. But there comes a point when patience becomes self-destruction. There comes a point when loving someone who cannot love you back becomes a slow form of suicide. And eventually, the empath did what they had to do. They walked away. They chose themselves. They chose their own sanity. They chose to stop pouring their energy into a vessel that would never fill back up. And they left. And that is when the real devastation began. Because the moment the empath walked out that door, the avoidant felt something they had spent their entire life running from, a feeling so overwhelming, so all-consuming, that they didn't have a single tool to handle it. They felt the full weight of loss crash into them like a wave that had been building for years, and they had no idea what to do with it. They had never learned how to grieve. They had never allowed themselves to sit with pain. They had spent their whole life pushing their emotions down so deep that when grief finally arrived, it arrived all at once with a force they couldn't withstand. It hit them like a freight train, and they had nothing to hold on to because they had spent their entire life refusing to hold on to anything or anyone. Here's what nobody tells you about avoidant people. They don't know how to feel. They don't know how to process sadness. They don't know how to let themselves break. So when the person who made them feel safe disappears from their life, they don't cry, they don't scream, they don't reach out, they shut down completely. Every emotion they never learned to handle gets locked away in a room inside them that has no door. And they walk around pretending they're fine while their soul is screaming in silence. The pain doesn't go away. It gets buried, and buried pain doesn't disappear. It grows. It transforms into something darker, something heavier, something that starts to feel like it will never end. The avoidant finds themselves lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling with a hole in their chest that they don't know how to fill. They replay every moment wondering where it went wrong. They want to reach out, but they don't know how because they never learned how to ask for what they need. They want to explain, but the words won't come because they never learned how to express what they're feeling. They want to heal, but they have no idea where to start because no one ever taught them that healing was even possible. And the cruelest part of all, they pushed away the only person who could have helped them through it. They repeated the same pattern that destroyed them as a child, and they did it to the one person who actually loved them. And that realization, when it finally hits, feels like being torn apart from the inside. But here is where it changes. Here's where the story takes a turn that the world never told you was possible. That pain you feel right now, that emptiness that seems like it will swallow you whole, is not your enemy. It is your greatest teacher. It is the universe forcing you to face everything you have been running from your entire life. And the moment you choose to stop running, the moment you decide to sit with that pain instead of burying it, is the moment you begin the most powerful transformation of your existence. Feeling pain means you are still alive. Feeling pain means something inside you is breaking open so that something new can finally be born. Every wound is an invitation. Every heartbreak is a doorway. And right now, you are standing at the threshold of the most important moment of your life. The moment where you decide whether you will continue to hide behind your walls or finally tear them down for good. You need to understand something that nobody ever taught you. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too damaged to love and be loved. You are not destined to push away everyone who tries to get close to you. You are simply someone who never learned the tools to handle emotion, and that is not a flaw. That is not a weakness. That is a wound that was created before you had any say in the matter, and now it is your responsibility to heal it. Not because you owe it to anyone else, not because you need to fix yourself for someone else, but because you deserve to live a life where you are not afraid of your own heart. You spent so long believing that feeling less would protect you. You thought that if you didn't let yourself love deeply, you wouldn't hurt deeply, but that was a lie you told yourself to survive. And it worked for a while. It kept you safe in a world that felt dangerous. But safety is not the same as living. Safety is not the same as experiencing the full richness of what it means to be human. And deep down, you know that. Deep down, you have always known that the walls you built were keeping something precious trapped inside you. Something that wanted nothing more than to be seen, to be held, to be loved without conditions. The empath showed you what connection could feel like. And even though they left, that possibility still exists. It still lives inside you, and now you have a choice. You can let their departure break you permanently, or you can let it wake you up permanently. You can let the pain turn into bitterness and anger and more walls, or you can let it become the foundation of a completely new version of yourself, one who understands their wounds, one who has empathy for their own suffering, one who finally learns to feel without falling apart. This is not easy. Healing never is, but it is possible. And the fact that you are still here, the fact that you are watching this video and letting these words sink into your soul, means that part of you is ready. Part of you has been waiting for this moment your entire life. The moment where someone finally tells you that it is okay to feel, that it is okay to need, that it is okay to be vulnerable without being destroyed. You are not weak for feeling this pain. You are weak for pretending it doesn't exist. You are not soft for hurting. You are soft for refusing to face what made you hurt in the first place. Healing is not weakness. Healing is the bravest thing you will ever do. And if you can survive losing the person who made you feel safe, then you can survive anything, including the process of becoming whole again. Let this wound be the doorway. Let this pain be the teacher. Let this loss be the beginning of something you never knew was possible. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by what you do with what happened to you. And today, you choose to stop running. Today, you choose to stop hiding. Today, you choose to feel everything you have been afraid of and come out the other side stronger than you ever believed you could be. The wound you feel today is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of it. And the person you become after you heal from this will be someone you are finally proud to be. Someone who knows how to love without fear. Someone who knows how to feel without falling apart. Someone who built themselves back up with their own two hands because nobody else could do it for them. That is who you are. That is who you have always been capable of becoming. And it starts now. It starts with you deciding that you are worth the pain of healing, because you are. You always were.